just a second.
Okay.
Okay, so the streaming is now
Yeah,
on.
it's now streaming. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So today I want to talk about policy scopes. As all of you know, I have a bunch of PRs for adding support for blob signing, arbitrary blob signing, and those specifications. One of the comments from Milind is about the confusion that blob scopes are causing. So he's recommending a new proposal. I'll share a doc with you all here. Let's go over the doc, add comments, and we'll discuss.
Okay. Yeah, before we start, I saw a new face. Maybe I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry about that. Maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hey, hi. I am Rishabh. I am from AWS Signer team. I work with Rakesh. I'm a software developer in AWS Signer, and yeah, just wanted to understand what's going, how the meetings are conducted, and since I will be contributing to Notary project and as all the CLS for the CLS specs.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Rakesh, will you share the screen or do you want me to share?
I shared the doc link in the chat here. People can start reading the doc, and when we discuss, we can share the screen.
Okay, so we give around 10 minutes to view the doc first.
Yeah. Yeah, probably it shouldn't take 10 minutes, but
okay.
As soon as everyone is done reading, maybe they can add a comment and we can start.
Okay.
Hey folks, Rakesh.
Hey, Milin. People are reading the doc.
Oh, you shared the link. Yeah, it's not much of a doc. It's just sketching on other options so we could discuss it. I'll start sharing my screen and then we can discuss. Are folks still reading?
Yeah, I'm done. How about others?
I'm still reading. Maybe
Okay.
I will need 1 more minute.
Yeah,
About
sure.
2 more minutes. Yeah, and I can see your screen.
Yeah.
I just finished. About others?
Okay, I'll get started then. Does anybody need more time? Okay. So this is the blob verification, CLI experience, and policy experience. Rakesh has been working on this spec and CLI experience update, the PRs. We have been reviewing it. I want to make suggestions about the end user experience. I'm not totally like, I think it can be simplified a bit more, and I'm putting some options on the table and looking for feedback from this group on like, what do you think? What do you think about the current experience in the PR and the proposed experience? I'll say like where I'm coming from here. We, for OCI artifacts, we started with, you can define a trust policy with multiple policies in it. Policies have a name and policies have registry scope. Registry scope's value is image URI prefix or fully qualified image URI. And then you have the rest of the things, which is the signature verification, trust stores, identity. And using scopes, there was a way to say applies for all images by saying star. We're using wildcards. At that point, that experience was designed only with images in mind, and now we are extending it to blobs, which is a new artifact. So we are having to extend the CLI experience and the trust policy experience. So my goal here is, I want to keep the, like, if I'm a blob user and I don't deal with images, I want to have a policy which is as much tailored to the blob experience or as optimized for the blob experience. There may be scenarios where I'm dealing with both kind of artifacts, but unless I'm in that scenario, I want the user experience to be as simple as possible. That's how I'm looking at this. And what we did in the iteration, which is in PR right now, is we generalized the registry scopes to scopes, and it can have registry prefixes. We have this OCI : kind of qualifier to say this is OCI type, and then in the blob, we have a blob colon. And the CLI experience is policy scope. The feedback that I have there is like in the CLI documentation and how we are talking about the scope concept, I don't think it is as, like personally, I feel it isn't as clear for users to understand what is a policy scope. Generalizing that like makes it difficult to, like I feel that the concept may be difficult for end users to understand. Also, the meaning of that concept is different in different contexts. In the registry case, it is a prefix, but in the blob case, it's nothing that filters based on the incoming artifact. It's just a label for the policy, my interpretation. And name is already an identifier or label for the policy, which is where I'm leaning towards. So if you see here, policy scope, Wabbit networks, this is not equivalent to how we provide prefixes in the registry case. It is just another way of referring to this particular policy. So question there is, why can't we drop there and just rely on name, which makes it something like this, a blob verify policy name, and then you just provide the name. And the scope goes away. Also, like another part to look here is, I think we agreed on we don't want to mix, like for example, in the scopes collection, we said we don't want to mix these. So it'll always be OCI, a group of OCI prefixes or some blob prefixes. So we agreed on separating them out. And the other thing we are saying is we may want to specialize the policy language based on the artifact type. And if we're keeping them separate, another option to consider is, can we separate these policies itself by artifact type? So here, this is trustpolicy.blob.json. For the OCI case, we can, for backwards compatibility, this is just a proposal. For backwards compatibility, we can retain the one existing as is, not make any changes if we feel that is a better, like don't have to make current users make any changes. But we are introducing blob here, so in this case definitely we can introduce new elements. So we can have a new file name for this blob specific policy type, and we can also have a top level policy type attribute in it. This allows us to say in future, if there are other types of types of artifacts that have a different verification experience, you can write policies specific to it, and we can customize that policy language to like optimize it for that particular scenario. We don't have to overload existing concepts to handle these two scenarios. I think last point is, for the blob case, it's either verification by specifying a policy name, or the other case that is supported in the previous example too is like you don't give a policy name, then there is a need for saying which is a global policy. And the global policy here is supported by this scopes blob : star. Here, one way to support it is just saying blobs : star. Instead, the scopes is completely dropped. The other option was to have a flag saying global policy, that like we can still debate on that. And then the corresponding changes for images look like this: trust policy, OCI image, JSON, policy type, and then replace the registry scope with images. And then you may have seen this. I just put in some examples of like snippets from how it looks like for similar, like in Kyverno and 6-store policy. All right. Feedback? Are folks good with the proposal?
Hey, Million, I have a question regarding the blobs field in the trust policy file.
Yes.
So apart from the wildcard, is there any other optional values that users can fill out in the blobs field?
I think in the current use cases, there isn't. Like media type ideally would have been, but we don't have like a deterministic way of user specifies the media type. So it's not something we can rely on. I don't see any other use cases in there for the blob star. I'm open to simplifying it further. The blobs colon array with a value of star is kind of confusing because right now the only value would ideally be like the blobs colon value star. It may not even need to support an array.
I think Milind Shive has some questions in the chat. He's asking what will notation policy command look like, and he's trying to simplify the blobs, that array with the star to a flag is better in the chat.
Trying to get to the chat. Okay.
What will notation policy command look like is his first question.
Let's see that. Give me a sec. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, thanks, Vani, to mention that. Actually, I have 3 questions. I'm actually typing the third one.
So you say the blobs colon with the array star should be a flag instead of the blobs.
Yeah, I think Melanie mentioned that we can replace the blobs star with a flag for the blob trust policy. I think it's better because I don't find any scenario that we need to specify anything for the blobs, and the blobs itself is confusing.
So let's look at this. I think in policy, show and import, right? Again, I haven't thought through this. We'll have to further qualify. If they get separated out into their own policy docs, you'll have to qualify here which policy is being shown, right? So notation import, you would have to specify that we are overriding the blob or importing the blob policy. Right now, the default is it'll just import the image policy. Same for show, it'll need an additional flag to say this is show me the blob policy. So we can keep the existing experience as is and introduce flags which will support either the blob or the OCI image. Does that answer, Shiva?
Yes, that means we can have a blob flag for those commands so that they can so that users can show or import blob trust policies, right?
Yeah.
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 Thanks.
Users will need a way of saying I'm talking about either the image policy or blob policy here. Yeah.
Is this breaking a lot of assumptions in notation? Like currently, it's single trust policy file, right? If we are introducing different types of policy documents, is it breaking a lot of assumptions? I mean, does this need a lot of work to make it work for different files?
I think that's a good question in terms of notation, library, how different methods default on the default policy location versus now it'll probably have an additional parameter to say which policy is being referred.
Yeah, I think we'll need a bunch of changes in the directory specification as well.
I think the directory specification will not change much because it's just what locations, right? The directory specification says what locations, and there's already a defined location for trust policy. This is a new policy in that same location.
Doesn't this need a directory for trust policies since there can be multiple files?
But they're differentiated by their extensions, right? In this the way in this proposal. Let me pull that up. Give me a sec.
Yeah, I think we need to closely look at the rest of these specifications and see how this affects them.
So here's the directory spec. You can see here, right? Trust policy resides here. So any new policy will be at the same level. Again, yes, I haven't looked at all the different areas. My feedback is primarily from the user experience. Shiva, Fenman, Yi, what do you think about separating them out versus same file and like moving from scopes as a concept? We're trying to be more specific here in terms of the terminology we are using in the policy language.
Yeah, I have some comments. Actually, if we want to split, right? Have one for image, have another one for blob. So firstly, I mean, as we just discussed the policy command, right? And so currently, what we suggest for the user is that they can edit a JSON file in any place, and then they can use the policy import file to import the policy, right? We just discussed, and we needed to understand what's the impact if we split the file. Another thing is, and in the future, we may need to introduce other trust policy commands, right? How can we do that? We can, I think it's better that we can consider this improvement together because it's related. The
What are
third
the?
one is, yeah,
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
yeah. If you asking the other commands, is that previously we plan in this the upcoming release 1.1, we would like to introduce some new policy commands so that user don't need to manually edit a JSON file. They can just use command like policy add, policy update, so that they don't need to edit the file and they don't need to copy the file from some places. So,
Okay.
But we didn't do it due to the plan. We didn't do it in this upcoming release yet. But it's better that we can consider that. Yeah, and another comment is about the backward compatibility. I think Shui also has a comment on that. So if we have a separate file, according to your proposal, for the image file, you want also to change the name, right?
I think that is
Uh,
that is just showing what it means for image. We don't have to adopt the changes for image. We can say the trust policy for images stays as is. I think the only thing probably to debate in like version 1.1 is so it's so here's what it looks like to maintain backward compatibility, right? This doesn't change. Trust policy.json is what it will be for image. Policy type, if not specified, is assumed to be OCI image. We continue supporting registry scopes. We can debate if we want to introduce images as an alternate key for registry scopes. That way we can keep backward compatibility.
Yeah, if we want to change it, or I mean, this image scope, okay,
If we
you
feel
mean,
registry, yeah. So either like we're saying, we currently have registry scopes. If we want to make it more specific, we can use images, which seems to be in line with some of the other examples that I put in here from other products. And we can support both of them, right? So registry scopes and images both will work. And yeah, that's the backward compatibility story. About the trust policy commands, I think all those options it'll work similarly. The moment we split this, it means additional, like for all the policy commands, you need another parameter, right, across all of the policy subcommands that allows you to say what is the type, policy type, blob or OCI. And again, there we can default to, we'll have to default to the images one if that is not specified.
Yeah, I saw Shui has comments. Yeah, Shui.
Yeah, Shiva.
Yeah, just make sure that he has finished his comments. So, I finished for the comments.
Yeah, please continue. I may have more comments. Yeah, please, you continue first. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. And thanks for meaning for explaining the backward compatibility. I think the proposal is good. That is, we can make the that actually the transport.oc slash image.json is can be transport.json as it is, and transport type is optional for the OCI dash image, and the images are the alias of the repository scopes, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, we can do the backward compatibility. Then it's for the 1.1. Okay. I think that's cool. And I agree that separated file are good because if you look at the original proposal, can go back to the scopes. It's actually very hard to find out the global value for the OCI images. Here you need to look at the entire file to find, okay, the global one is at the line 19. So it's actually make it hard for user to compose their own trust policy. And if there's an error, it's hard to debug or find out where's the error here. So I think separating them into two trust policy files are making sense.
Cool. Any other
That's all.
feedback?
No, that's all for me.
I have one. We are going to introduce the blob notation blob command, right?
Yeah.
And there will be also sub commands under notation blob. So in this case, I mean, we want to separate the policy file, so this will not impact the blob command, right? The blob command just, I mean, it could be notation blob, some policy command for blob as well.
So the example here, right? The change being suggested for the CLI command is the PR currently has minus policy scope. Instead of that, we are just using minus policy name. So here, when you're talking about when you need to say a specific policy, you just use the name, which is an existing attribute. And we don't have to do any more other changes, right? That the top level or the subcommand blob is already qualifying it that we are talking about blobs.
Okay. So for the policy name, can we have the same policy name for different policies? I think according to, if I remember correctly, according to the current trust policy document, it seems the scopes are other differentiator. So I'm not sure whether we can use same name for different policies. So that means the name could be another key, right?
Yeah, I think need to validate that. I didn't check. I believe based on how we wrote the spec, there wasn't any conditions for name because we didn't use it anywhere. So
Yeah.
I don't think we have validations with, say, for example, that they currently can contain white spaces, etc. I don't think we have any validations. Also, I don't think they're unique. So like one of the things to like enable this is in 1.1, it would be, we would have constraints for these on name.
Yeah. For the policy type in this screen,
Yeah.
so this is mandatory, right? So that we know whether it is for blob or whether it is for image, right?
Yes. If for backward compatibility, we can assume if policy type is not provided, then it is the image one.
Okay.
I mean, there's some duplication here. If you see, we have the extension having blob and then a policy type, but I feel I'm open to feedback here. Like this extension comes into place when the policy is placed in the directory, right? Like if I'm using import, my local policy could be can have any name. And at that point, it's not saying what type of policy. And if in future or now, if we want to do some validations at import time, I mean, import is specifying what, like if it is a blob, import it as a blob policy or not. I'll think about it if we really need the policy type.
Yeah. I think the goal is try to simplify the policy management experience for our users, right? So we can if we can achieve it by some commands, then a user don't need to care about what's the name, right?
Then this name field in the policy.
Is the name that we stored the policy in the config directory, because user can
Okay.
user can import any policy, right? Any JSON file. This is just the file name
You're right.
have this registry. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the file extension convention that the tooling is using. End users are not being directly exposed if they use the policy import.
Yeah. Yes. Another thing in this screen, we have the policy type, and in the middle we have the blobs. We have the global policy, right? So I'm thinking that whether there's other way for global, because this is a policy for a blob. No matter we can differentiate from the name or from the policy type. So I think the blobs here is redundant, and it didn't reflect the globe. Although we can use the name for that, but maybe there's a better way that's for global policy.
Yeah, I'm open to feedback there.
Yeah, I'm also asking
it would
questions.
need another attribute.
Yeah, I'm also asking this question is whether we have a better way for global policy. So currently we differentiate by checking, for example, currently we use registry scopes. We are checking whether it is well cast, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, which is where we're also trying to see if it can use the same language as the existing. We are trying to have some commonality, right? Because the other option would be to introduce default policy true or global policy true as an additional attribute.
Yeah, I think that we can discuss further, because from global policy, the name doesn't matter, right? And also the field name blobs or images, they are actually redundant because we know this policy type.
Yeah.
So to the same point, right, Milind, if we have the name of the policy, like you have the trust policy.blob.json, if the name of the trust policy itself suggests it's a blob or an image, if you don't have a blob like trust policy.json, then it's as good as it's an image, right? Do we have to have a policy type and a image attributes in there? Similarly, the policy type in the blob and blob itself.
I'll spend some thought on that. I think the policy type having it defined as part of the JSON still helps. Like, for example, when you're doing import or any other operations, you're not relying on the file extension. I'll think a bit more about it and see if it is redundant. The images and blobs, this images is still required, at least in this case, where you're saying for these prefixes, this policy should be applied. Similarly here, This is equivalent to registry scope star, right? So this is the global policy. In this case, blobs is not really required. Think about, I'll propose alternates here. I just try to keep the language kind of similar. It can just be a flag and the blobs can be dropped. Does that answer, Vani?
Yeah, Milind, it helps. Yeah, if we have two different files, if that's going to help, then yeah, policy type would help. Yeah.
Okay. Then I think at a high level, Rakesh, do you have feedback?
I think one thing is, can users have multiple policy files for blob verification, or should it always be a single file?
I think, I mean, currently we are constraining this, right? We are saying all image policies or blob related need to be defined in a single file. I think in most cases that suffices. Like multiple files means, I don't know, like you're like trying to compose it independently, or two different people are creating policies and that is being applied. I think there's a way to support that scenario if it is really required, which would be like on the command line, you say minus minus policy and take a particular policy. But I think that's debatable because we have like other considerations on which location the policy is placed in, and can end users control, modify or access that policy. I think that there's a bunch of different considerations there. Go on,
Yeah, I think if there is a possibility of having multiple files for an artifact type, it makes sense to have a directory for trust policies, right? And then use blob.json as the suffix for differentiating blob trust policies from other trust policies. At that point, I think we can get away with policy type field. So as we can use the suffix for differentiation, and also customers or users are free to name these files however they like, right? Currently,
I think once it's imported into the directory structure, or into the config top level directory, we want it to follow a certain convention. You have your hand raised.
Yeah. One comment about about our experimental feature OCI layout. I think for OCI layout, this feature we use policy flag, right? I didn't remember clearly. Maybe Shui can comment. I think we use policy command, right? Policy flag.
For the OCR layout, it's the same as the OCR images. It's the same. They share the same commands or policies.
But for the verify, we specify a flag for the policy we want to use, right?
No,
can
no,
you-
no. That's not true. So basically, for the OCR layout, the idea is that we verify the OCR layout as if it is a remote repository. So only the repository scope is provided. I can't remember the actual flag name, but
So
yeah.
Okay, it's the scope. So we may need to consider align the behavior, right?
Not
Uh,
exactly. Not exactly, because the OCR layout is experimental. It can be changed later if it's not uh 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 I mean it's not compatible with the mainstream, then we can change it later. But I think for Millie's proposal, the OCR layout is not impacted.
Maybe meaning, can you help to scroll down?
yeah,
For the
sure.
for the OCR layout, I think we have some requirement on the
Yeah.
how to write the scope, right? So the registry scope,
Okay, so there's a local slash. Is that oh, that's okay.
yeah, I mean, if we want to use policy name for block, I think it's better for OCR layout later. We can consider also to use the name, right? Otherwise, it will be different experience. But
So what is
actually
local slash hello world here?
I think here is just an example for OCR layout. User can, I mean, at that time follow the registry scope format, but it is not a repository, right? So so at that time we use local slash to follow the UI format requirement on this field. But actually, like the proposal for the blob, we can still use the name, right? With this
Yeah, we
policy
can
name,
use name. Let me get this right. So when we use the minus minus OCI layout, excuse me, is the image locally available on the file disk?
yeah, it's on the file system. Yeah,
So
in a format of
the local slash hello world in this example is a relative to your this local directory.
no,
Okay. Minus minus scopes is just referring to this
yeah,
policy.
yes.
Oh, okay. Then what is hello world v1?
It's a local image in OCI layout format. I think it's it's a directory. The hello world is a directory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in
So
that case,
yeah,
it should use name. Because again, here, like I think that is where my contention was. Like in the registry scopes scenario, we are using it as a URI prefix, but in the blob scenario, we were using scope as just a label. It seems in this case, it is a label too, which is where it can just use the name. And like here, we can see the name doesn't have any constraints.
yeah.
If we have unique name and with additional validation rules, no white spaces, etc. Yeah, we can use the same thing here.
Yeah,
It'll be
I think
minus
it's better.
minus
Yeah,
policy name. Okay.
yeah, it's better. We can also, yeah, we can also consider the design for the OCI layout as well. And as Shui mentioned, it's experimental feature. If OCI layout needed to change, we can change that.
Yeah,
But
I can
what is
make
going to be the registry scopes in this case? Is it going to be like empty or is it not going to exist?
Sorry, Rakesh, I didn't get it.
So for OCI layouts, the trust policy, right? If we choose the policy name, are we going to drop registry scopes from the policy, or is it still going to be there for OCI layouts only? I'm not
That
talking
is a
about
good
OCI
point.
images.
That's a good point because right now registry scopes is a required field.
Yeah. I think we don't have time to discuss further, but this can be considered and we can further discussion. We can have a first discussion on this.
Yeah, I can add this in that same
Yeah.
proposal and see.
Yeah.
Also,
Mm.
if we add more validation rules on policy name for OCI trust policies, it's a backward incompatible change, right?
It's an
something
experimental feature. Yeah.
Yeah, this is experimental feature, but OCI layouts and OCI images share the same trust policy document, right?
Yeah.
And if we want to use policy names for OCI layouts, we'll have to enforce validation rules there so that the policy name doesn't contain spaces and everything, right? If we do that, we'll have to do that for image policies as well, which is an incompatible change.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that is right.
I think that
we go on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can discuss this further, and I think the ultimate goal is that we can introduce commands for user to manage trust policy, and the trust policy file and the file name, they are all managed by the tooling. So it will be very easy for user, right? Otherwise, they need to know for image, I need to edit a policy like this. For blob, I need to remember something other. So when I do the import, I also need to remember to put some flags. So I think, yeah, we can, although currently we don't have other policy commands yet, but for the design, we can also consider it. But from implementation point of view, we can do it iteratively, right? Yeah, in general, I think split the policy file is a good idea. As we all explained that it could be a very long policy, right? And user will get lost with different fields and also different policies in that files. I think this is a good proposal. It's just from long-term point of view, we should consider how to simplify this for the user so that the user don't need to remember this field, right? Don't need to manually edit the files. They just use command to do that.
Yeah. Is there a, I don't know the state of the spec. Is there a spec for the policy add, etc.?
No, not yet.
Okay, all right. Fenman has his hand raised.
Yeah, I have a question in a certain scenario. So maybe we don't have enough time, but I just left this question as a brainstorming item for our next discussion. So my question is that I as a project maintainer for an open source project, and I want to use the feature signing blob to sign the release assets. You know, we will release different packages for open source project, and we will have different binaries released on the GitHub release page, right? So if I want to use notation to sign those binaries and publish the signatures on the GitHub release page, so as a user, how can I fill out the scope in the trust policy file? Should I use wildcard, or what kind of value should I use in the trust policy file in the scope field? I think if we don't have time, we can bring this question?
I think I'll try to give a short answer there. So what we are saying is, at least in the newer proposal, right, we are saying not using scopes. What the publisher of that blob artifact will do is they will document a policy, sample policy, and specify what their, I mean, of course, they'll have to distribute their, depends on where they're getting certificates, etc. from. But the policy fragment, they'll have to say use this policy fragment. And the policy commands we should have operations to add individual policies in that file, right? So the end-to-end experience is something is documented on the publisher's page, and then the user says, okay, I choose to use this, and they run a command that ideally is able to do all of it, right? What is the certificate that is trusted, the optional trusted identity, and the rest of the parameters. At a high level, that is what it should look like.
We
Does
will
it
drop
answer?
we will drop the scope field in the blob type of trust policy, right?
Yeah. So it'll just be a name which can be user defined. Like somebody documenting it can say Acme policy, Wabbit Networks policy, but the user is free to rename it to whatever that they want. Yeah, Shiva.
I have a last question. So we are still using the trust policy for the blobs verification, right? So can we specify policy on the fly when we run the notation blob verify? I think it's a valid scenario for blobs.
Sorry, come again. I didn't understand that.
So can we specify one policy per run of the notation blob verify command?
Here, this one?
Yeah, yes,
Plus
I mean,
marketing?
yes. So basically, people just don't want to use the policy file. They just want to just enter the policy, the actual policy on the command line, so that each blob verify can have a unique trust policy.
They can. I think those are options to, I think those are like improvements to consider for policy and verification experience.
Yeah.
I think one part that probably I need to get up to speed on is like what is our position on like the trust store and the policy files, they being protected against end user updates, right? Like we have some level of separation where at least I think probably at a minimum have a path where like an admin can set up trust policy, trust stores, and not have it overridden by end users. Or right, that I thought that was one of the goals initially. I think that we should keep that in mind when we extend this.
Yeah, but what if users do want to and there's no admin? So
Sorry, can you repeat that?
yes. So what if the users want to override the policy and there's no admin to reject the modification? I think it depends on scenarios, but yes, we can consider them later.
Yeah, I think these are like open questions. I don't have a straight answer right now. All right, we are at time. Anything else?
And I have something but not related to this proposal. I mean, next Monday is public holiday in US, right? So, so my proposal is that we can cancel the meeting next Monday. What do you think?
Can we have a meeting on Tuesday?
So you want to have a meeting on Tuesday? Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think there are a bunch of things on this proposal that need to be fleshed out. So I think we need to have one more discussion.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. How about others? We can move the Monday meeting to Tuesday the same time.
I will be there since in China we are still working next week.
I may be on leave next week, but if there are discussions around this, probably Rakesh will be up to speed on it to continue the discussion. I probably, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. How about Shiwei? Is that okay for you?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. So then I will move next Monday meeting to Tuesday. So yeah, I will send out that in the Slack and also change the schedule. And for anything, Rakesh, meaning you want to discuss, you can just ping us in the Slack before the meeting, before the next meeting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Then we end up this meeting. Thank you.
Well,
Have a nice
thanks.
day. Bye.